Hey everybody, welcome back to another video, and as you can tell by my t-shirt, today's topic will be Star Trek, one of my all-time favorite franchises. There's always a lot of debate between Star Trek and Star Wars and fandom, which one is better, which one do you like more. I like them both. I can't see why you can't enjoy them both. I prefer Star Trek to Star Wars because it's a little more about the human experience, but there's room enough in the galaxy for both. If you've been enjoying my videos, please subscribe to my channel. Hit the little notification bell up there so you'll be the first to know whenever I post a new video. If you enjoy the video, hit the like button. Leave something down in the comments. Tell me something you like about it, something you don't like about it, something you like about Star Trek, or whatever you want to talk about. Let's get into it. So, when I was a little kid, growing up in New York, born in the late 70s, so Star Trek was kind of not gone by that time, but it was mostly in syndication and reruns. And I remember watching it. The first ever episode I saw of the original series was the Corbomite Maneuver, which is one of the best episodes of the entire series. Late night TV in New York. It was probably like 11 o'clock when I was up late. My grandmother used to let me watch TV and whatnot. And I just fell in love with it. And it would come on like every weekend, on like the PBS or whatever it was called at the time. So I just developed a love for Star Trek from the time I was a little kid. Some of the movies came out when I was younger, but the original series is really what got me hooked on it. Just so many classic, iconic characters with such an amazing cast. William Shatner, Captain Kirk, Leonard Nimoy, Mr. Spock. DeForest Kelly, Dr. McCoy. What's his face? Sulu, Uhura, Scotty. Chekhov, Nurse Chapel, like all these amazing actors and actresses, amazing characters, amazing bond that they had. I know, like, behind the scenes, they all kind of didn't like each other or they didn't like William Shatner or whatnot, but just such an amazing story, such an amazing show, such an amazing franchise. So I just want to kind of tell you about that, like I said. In my teen years, I was still into it. Star Trek I've never really gotten out of. Whereas Star Wars for many years there in the middle of my life, I kind of was overkill. I couldn't take it anymore. I got away from it. Star Trek I've always kind of stuck with. So many different shows, so many different movies, video games, whatnot, comic books. Star Trek to me, like I said, is my favorite of the two big sci-fi franchises. But it's not like I don't have any love for them both, as a teenager, big shocker, I wasn't Mr. Popular. So Saturday night I was home, and they would do like 3 episodes every Saturday night on Channel 13 or PB, whatever it was called at that time in New York. And I used to have the old VHS tapes. Kids, ask your grandparents. And I would tape a couple episodes, and eventually over the course of a few months, I'd had the whole series on there. And, everybody's got their favorite episodes of the original series. Some were very serious, some were more comedic, some were a little dark. I had a little bit of everything. Of course, as time went on, by the 3rd season, the budget had been cut, kind of like the original Batman show. I mean, the quality was still there, but the special effects really weren't. The stories were a little more grounded, so as not to really, blow the budget up with all these alien worlds and whatnot. But, people accuse the first show, of being very sexist. Okay, I get it, but it was also a product of its time. It was the 1960s. People had different attitudes back then. You can't apply the, cancel culture mentality of today to something, 40, 50 years ago. It just doesn't work. It's a different era. Get over it and move on to something else. But, the original series, like I said, you had all these iconic characters, all these great stories that came out of it, all these amazing writers. I mean, it just bled science fiction for me. It's the greatest franchise, So then, again, when I was a kid, teenager, they came out with, Star Trek: The Next Generation. Now, granted, they had already had a couple of really good Star Trek movies by that time, but this was the first, like, new Star Trek series on TV in all 20 years or whatever it was. The movies kind of kept the fandom alive, and they had conventions, and actually went to a convention with one of my friends as a kid at the Nassau Coliseum in New York, where the Islanders play. Went to like my first ever Star Trek convention, and it was cool, because there's people selling items, there's people with collectible items. It was the 25th anniversary of Star Trek that time we went. So they had William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy there, on stage for like an hour and a half talking to everybody. So that was kind of cool. But then the Next Generation came out, and as much as I loved the original series, like Next Generation was just more modern, more updated. It was kind of like a slow burn. The first couple seasons were really not great. I still loved it, but it really hit its stride from like season 4 to the end. I mean, and by that time, it was one of like the greatest Star Trek shows of all time. Of course, you had Patrick Stewart playing Captain Jean-Luc Picard. There's always that debate who was a better captain, Kirk versus Picard. Kirk was more the womanizer, swashbuckling pirate type, and Picard was more like the negotiator, the steady, calm type. Both great captains. Again, why can't they all be good? Like, I hate when there's these debates about who was the best captain. They all have their great merits. Star Trek: The Next Generation, 7 years, and then went on to have a couple of good movies as well. There was a few duds as far as the movies. There was, a few in the first series that were not great. There was a few in the Next Generation series that were not that great. But overall, if you're a Star Trek fan, you didn't really have a lot to complain about. Then they had the offshoot. They had Deep Space Nine, which really it is probably one of the best Star Trek series of all time. I mean, overall, it was like great all the way through, and they just again a reflection of the times that we were in. The Dominion Wars, what they called it. They had a war with these creatures from another quadrant. Which was kind of like, I don't say mimicking real life, but social commentary on what was going on in real life, which Star Trek has always been famous for. If I'm not mistaken, the first ever interracial kiss on TV was Star Trek. Star Trek has a habit of pushing the line and saying stuff without saying stuff, which is kind of cool. They were the first ones to have like a lesbian kiss. So I mean, Star Trek has been a lot more progressive than some people give it credit for. I'm not progressive, just to let you know, but I mean Star Trek has been. Great show. Deep Space Nine, they say it was an idea stolen from Babylon 5, and I got one of my best friends in New Orleans is huge on Babylon 5. He's been trying to get me to watch it for many, many years. He's also a huge Star Trek fan because, he was around in the 60s and whatnot. Eventually I'm going to watch Babylon 5, okay? But for now, we'll stick to Star Trek. Then they came out with the UPN network, which was Channel 9 in New York, and Voyager, Star Trek Voyager, was the first show to go for that network. So I remember I actually still have in storage, probably moldy and God only knows what, like a bag of popcorn, like with the Star Trek, celebrate the launch of a new Star Trek show with this network. I probably need to throw that out before it gets bugs in storage. But anyway, Voyager came on, and I thought Voyager was great as well. Another great captain, Catherine Janeway, played by, what's her face? I can't think of her name. But another awesome character. Voyager was a little different. Like the original Star Trek was, on a ship, their 5-year mission. Next Generation, kind of similar, on a ship, 5-year mission. Deep Space Nine was probably the most big departure from the main thing. It was kind of just like a station out way at the end of the universe. And then Voyager kind of gets lost like 70 years away from home. So like they all had their own little, gimmick like that. I didn't see Voyager until many years later, though, because that was the time I was in the Army. So a couple, maybe 5-6 years ago, I binge watched the whole series and finally finished it. I thought it was great. Now, after that, a show called Enterprise came out, which was sort of like a prequel to everything. I've seen a few episodes on Netflix. I couldn't get into it. I mean, it was good in its own way, but I just didn't feel that there was those iconic characters. Like every other Star Trek show has those iconic characters that you just latch onto, that you can identify with. Again, Enterprise wasn't bad, but I think I made it like 18 episodes in. It was on for like 3 or 4 seasons. I have to go back eventually and watch it. I just couldn't get into it. Again, good stories and all, but it just something about it. Maybe it was just the time. Maybe like, the times are different now. I can get into it. Of course, I forgot the animated series, which was on in the 70s. It lasted like 2 seasons. Those are a little cheesy, but, I picked those up on DVD, I think, or I had them on Laserdisc even. I found them like a used box set of like the Laserdisc, which I'm a collector of weird things like that. I think I watched them on Netflix. I mean, they were okay, but, they were kind of cheesy, just kind of filler, waiting until the original Star Trek movie came out around 1980. Again, Star Trek and Star Wars always kind of bounced off each other's popularity. even though they're a different audience. Just the whole sci-fi thing. So then, after Enterprise ended, there really wasn't any Star Trek for a good long while. And then they came out with the rebooted movies, which, was like a younger crew, kind of like the history of how, all these characters first met and how they became a crew and whatnot. I thought they were pretty good. A lot of people don't like them. The first two were really good. I don't like the third one so much. It feels like a glorified episode. Maybe I'll go back and watch it another day. I really didn't like the third one, but the remake, just called Star Trek, which was like the 10th movie overall, I thought was great. I thought the next one was good, even though they kind of tried to hide the identity of the bad guy. Like, they did a piss poor job of that. It was pretty obvious who it was. Star Trek was kind of back. Not that it was ever gone the way Star Wars was always around because they've milked it to death. I talked about that in my Star Wars video. Star Trek has always kind of been around, but it's been a lot more low key. It's not like in your face as much as Star Wars. Well, then they, CBS bought the rights to Star Trek and Twilight Zone and all these other classic shows, and they came out with their own series. It had been many years since there was any Star Trek. The movies kind of generated a little bit of interest for the 50th anniversary, but probably not as much as the people behind the scenes wanted. So they came out with one called Star Trek Discovery. At first, I really didn't like the idea of it. It was, again, another prequel to the original series. I watched the first episode. It was free on CBS. At that time, I wasn't a subscriber to CBS All Access. Now it's like $10 a month I do it, but back then, I didn't like the changes they made. Like, the ship looked far too advanced. The costumes, the uniforms were just like, it was just way off. The Klingons looked off. So I didn't really get into it. And, it was another one of the controversial shows for 100 different reasons. But then when we finally got CBS All Access, I kind of got back into it. And now I actually like it. I believe it's on the third season now. They brought the Enterprise in during the second season before Captain Kirk. Had the good actor Anson Mount from Hell on Wheels. He's playing Captain Pike, who was, of course, the captain right before Kirk. So they're actually going to have a spin-off show with him and young Spock and Number One. So that's kind of cool. I'm back into it now, more than I had been for many years. They have these little shorts on there as well, like these little 5 to 10 minute little clips like that fill in some of the backstory and whatnot. Of course, they have the Picard series that came on CBS All Access, 20 years after The Next Generation. Because I forgot to mention, when they made the new movies, they kind of sort of made their own universe, but it's sort of tied back into the original universe. Like, there's the original universe and then what's called the Kelvin universe that the movies are set in, the remake movies. And they kind of blended it all together, and that kind of led into Picard. But, it was cool to see him back and, kind of the future, where they're going. And then in Discovery, like I said, whereas it started as a prequel to the original series, they've jumped forward in the story-wise. They've jumped forward 900 years, so it's like the future that we've never seen before. So it's kind of good. Again, I didn't like it at first, but it's very different in the method of filming and the way the episodes are. The original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, they were kind of, there's an overall story arc, but nothing really necessarily ties into the next one unless it's like a 2-part episode. Whereas Discovery, it's just like one continuous story. So it's different, but I gave it a shot and I kind of like it. It's just filmed differently. It's just the most different Star Trek, but it's actually pretty good. So I have rambled on a little bit longer than I wanted to, but just wanted to share my love of Star Trek. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have, please hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. Hit the little notification bell so you'll know whenever I post a new video. If you did enjoy it, tell me in the comments you didn't enjoy it. Let me know as well. If there's something Star Trek-wise you want to talk about, definitely bring it on. One of my big favorite franchises of all time. So I will see you guys in the next video. Live long and prosper, my friends.